one of the last demographic studies conducted of the Atlanta Jewish community was the 2006 Federation Demographic Study. Some of you may remember what it said. I didn't, and so I reread it. And if you look at it carefully, there are two data points, and I am confident that of these two data points, one has increased since 2006, and the other has probably decreased since 2006. The first data point that caught my attention is that while 18% of Jews living in Atlanta were born in Atlanta, 30% of them were born in New York or New Jersey. I am so proud to continue that tradition. You know, when I moved here, there was an article in the New York Times that said that the number one job-to-job, city-to-city transfer in 2016 was New York to Atlanta. I have to tell you that when I applied to college, every college admission person told me, you don't want to be just another number. I was thrilled to be just another number this time around, as I would suspect that 30% number has almost certainly increased. That said, this Shabbat, the more serious second data point was that at the time in 2006, only 33% of Atlanta Jews belonged to a synagogue, while 58%, that's almost two-thirds, belonged nowhere, not even to a JCC. And since the 2020 Pew Survey on Jewish life records a dramatic growth in Jews of no religion, I suspect that if this study were done today, the number would be even less as far as synagogue affiliation. Which is why this Shabbat, when we read the words, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, how goodly are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel, all of us in this room ought to give pause and think. As I said earlier, when traditionally do we say these words? When we enter into a synagogue. A synagogue is supposed to be a place, and in my humble opinion, it is a place of goodliness and dwelling. Yet if only 33% of Jews in the Atlanta Jewish community or fewer view this to be true, what are we missing? Where is everybody? Now, I want to assure you that I'm also a very practical person. And I know that even if we were giving away free bagels every Saturday, not everybody would show up. By the way, I love hearing when people tell me, I went to Bagelicious Saturday for lunch. You could have came here. You would have got it for free. Why would I tell you, The idea of Jews, I also want to say, disappearing from Jewish life is not novel. I hate to say it. It's always been happening, and it's always happened. Since Jews left Egypt, we are told by the Midrash that there were Jews who chose not to participate in Yetziat Mitzrayim. There were Jews who preferred a life of slavery than a life of freedom to being Jewish. No matter what we do, there will be a percentage of Jews who will get left behind. Only as we recite the words, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael, we cannot and should not stop ourselves from asking critical, adaptive questions about the nature of our ohel, about our tent. What are the needs out there that we are meeting? And what are the needs out there that we are not meeting? As they say in the corporate world, they call this a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats to the vitality of our shul community? What are the kinds of things that Jews might be attracted to that we aren't doing? And what are the kinds of things that we're not attracted to that we do? And lastly, and most importantly, what I want to speak about this morning, what are the barriers to entry in the tent of synagogues across the Atlanta area, perceived or actual, that keep Jews from going into the tent and seeing the goodness, the tov that we all know is here and in so many other Jewish communities throughout our city. This Shabbat, as we prepare to have a grand reopening of our community, which starts with Kiddush this morning, the free bagels, I'd like to talk about two barriers outside of the pandemic that I believe as a community, the Atlanta Jewish community and our Shul community, can work on in the new reality in which we find ourselves. Only as I've alluded to here, I do want to be careful because what I've discovered, having been in the Shul business for at least 12 years, is that many barriers, including the two I want to talk about today, are perceived more than they are real. And yet the problem is that if enough people perceive these barriers to be true, they may as well be real whether we like them to be or not. First and foremost, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov. For some Jews, synagogues are not goodly tents because there continues to be the perception of a barrier that is financial to entry. Building funds, Kol Nidre appeals, gala ads. I can tell you that any number of times Marty and I have been sitting in my office constantly in awe of the generosity of our Jewish community here at Eitz Chaim and its members. And I want to be clear that it's because of that generosity that we've never turned anyone away who wants to be here for a legitimate financial reason or otherwise. But let's also be clear, Ma tovu, there are Jews when they hear phrases like building fund, which I have to tell you I first discovered when I was a rabbi. I didn't even know that existed. Perceive synagogue membership to be a luxury not affordable to them. Or worse yet, for some Jews across our city, Judaism becomes more of a financial transaction than the kind of transactions that we want them to have. Transactions of sharing phone numbers with each other, transactions between God and the Jewish people, transactions of eating a bagel from the table. I've spoken to enough young Jews, and believe me, it's disheartening when one of them told me recently that synagogue membership was a lot like his Netflix account. If he was using the service, he would pay for it, and if he wasn't going to pay for it. Which is why to overcome this barrier and allow Jews to overcome the reticence they feel, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, we must begin in our new reality to reframe the conversation. I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten the question, Rabbi, do I have to join before I come to Tat Shabbat on a Saturday morning? My answer is, of course not. Instead, I tell them that Eitz Chaim is a community that prioritizes meaning-making before membership. You know, just this summer we had a new family enroll in our preschool. I'll never forget, 4 years ago, I named her daughter on this bima. Interfaith family. She was anxious. She just bought a house. Do I need to join the synagogue to have my baby named at the bima? No, I told her. Make a donation and stay involved. Get involved first. Know and learn about us. Well, now she is. Her child is in our preschool. She can feel at home here. Friends, there should be, as I said earlier, many transactions that take place in a synagogue. Exchanging phone numbers for play dates, Torah learning, acts of generosity. But if it is perceived across our city that synagogues are the kinds of houses that prioritize money over meaning, the tent of synagogue life will not thrive in our worlds and in our community. The second barrier, in my humble opinion, that keeps people from seeing synagogues as goodly is the barrier of what people in our day and age perceive a conservative synagogue to be. And I say this very carefully because if the recent Pew survey report makes anything clear, it is that the conservative movement branding is not a Ma tovu winner among Jews under 30. And for that part, I blame our national leadership for not leading the way in rebranding our movements, for canceling their college program outreach so many years ago, among many other things. At least according to the recent Pew survey, 8% of Jews under 30 identify as being conservative. And even if there's a few points there for a margin of error, that's still not particularly great. And so if you talk to young Jews today, what does the conservative movement often evoke? It evokes feelings of aging, exclusivity, closed-mindedness, instead of what we know to be true here at our synagogue: vibrancy, inclusivity, and openness that we have in our own community. It kills me when Debbie Deutsch comes and tells me that she talks to a new family in our preschool who says to her, "I had no idea there were so many young people here. Had I known, I would have come here first." That happens more often than not. Because conservative Judaism that needs a desperate rebranding is viewed as a stoic, insipid, religious school scene from the movie A Serious Man. If you saw the movie, you all know what I'm talking about. If you can't follow the Hebrew, you can't participate. We're the ones who yell at you if you use your cell phone on Shabbat in the building. Once again, I want to be clear. I am proud of what the conservative movement stands for. That's why I'm here. The conservative movement has an important role to play in the Jewish landscape of this great American Jewish country. But there are barriers that we need to think about, which is why we who are here must allow folks to see the tov, the goodliness, by redoubling our efforts to promote and rebrand ourselves, Eitz Chaim, as Northwest Atlanta's traditional, inclusive, authentic Jewish community experience. We must tell our friends and our children about our amazing inclusion committee and the work it has done to make our shul a more inclusive place. We must promote our crown gem of an adult education program, our Lil Mod program that allows Jews of all backgrounds to learn wherever they may be so they can feel at home here. We must celebrate our first ever Pride Shabbat in October. Because Matovu, for our home to be goodly and our dwelling place excellent, we must spread the perception of so many things that we are already doing despite our branding. We must welcome all who seek to grow with us Jewishly in our Kehillah. This coming week, we as a community are going to have a really big welcome that we all need to do together. We are all going to share in the responsibility of welcoming our new associate rabbi, Rabbi Micah Miller, and his family. I hope you're all going to give Rabbi Miller, his daughter Aria, and his wife April a warm welcome. You know, he grew up in St. Louis. His last pulpit was in St. Paul. I'm going to start by joking above all else, it's a miracle given all that saintliness that he became a rabbi. As his future mentor, though, I have to share with you that while I have spent the past month plotting in excitement, I've also been reflecting a lot on what he's going to bring to our shul community. Another different rabbinic voice. And no doubt it will be another test for us of how welcoming, how goodly our tent truly is. Although he and I are only a couple years apart in age, we are over a decade apart in our schooling. I went to school in New York and love me some barbecue. He went to school in Los Angeles and is a vegan. By definition, I think the way we view the world is going to be just a little bit different. Only I know the way that we are going to welcome Rabbi Miller into our community and his family, just as I was welcomed so warmly 5 years ago, is going to serve as a test for how we would welcome anyone into our shul community. To allow all those folks to see the tov, to see the goodliness that we have in this place. May all of us pledge this Shabbos and every Shabbat to make this house a place where we break down barriers rather than erecting them. Whether you were born in New York, New Jersey, or God forbid, even Atlanta. May we spread the word to our greater community so that we may have 100% of our Jews in this city sing next year, this time on Shabbos, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, because they will know the goodliness that we have here. Shabbat Shalom.